President of everything.
Ball is for asking questions only.
Go on, say something, Sean Connery.
Yes? The white balls. The white balls are the powers, yeah? The speakers. Yeah, you can ask a question.
This is strictly for questions.
Strictly, the red ball is strictly for questions, yeah? And the microphone is for the quiet. Who else? They're speakers already.
I see a red ball now.
Yeah, the red ball is for asking questions.
Where's the ball for Mo?
Yeah?
Well, I need to interrupt you. I need to interrupt you.
Still love you, Mo.
But so if we get any quiet people,
Let's open up just a little bit.
use the
Yeah,
microphone.
there's a little bit.
But the red ball is questions only. 1 or 2 questions. Don't keep firing questions, rhetorical questions. No. In general. So you got that, haven't you? The red ball.
It's my idea.
Yeah, that's right.
That's all right, that's a nice place.
And microphones. Okay.
This is your idea.
Is that it?
Right, Pavlov, you got your own ball.
Microphones.
He's got his own ball. He's got your own.
I just got balls.
He's got right.
Now put the microphones. Yeah?
All right. Balls sorted. And it's all.
What's the question?
I think we should reserve.
So we have to get the microphone and the ball.
Yes.
And the
Wow! You
Yeah.
got a microphone.
I mean, it kind of defeats
Oh yes,
the
that's right.
purpose
Yeah,
of
look,
I
there's
didn't know that. That is awesome.
2 microphones now.
Yo, I see
They
three.
haven't got
I see
radio
three.
mic yet. They
I
haven't got
see three.
radio mic. So two
I see 3. How about you pick the microphone to speak, and the ball is for the one who speaks next? Like that way we can.
No.
So we need to get both.
Yeah, you got to have the power.
You've got to hold the ball to say that you're speaking. And hold the mic to.
Like a king, you know, like a king with the thing and with the scepter.
Yeah, he just said the same thing. He just said the same thing.
No, don't worry.
Microwave generation.
I got everything, man. Mic, balls, everything.
Very nice.
I
I
want
like
it now. And I deserve it.
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
Right, if anyone wants to join the parliament, please do. Then no one needs to be elected.
We
Join
need
the parliament.
new
If you want to say something,
speakers.
have a sit here.
Yeah, come here,
Careful
people,
what
come
you
here.
volunteer for.
Sit down.
Can I put the question?
Yes!
Say whatever you want.
Right. Who would like to start off?
Gentlemen here, grab a ball.
Oh, question. All right. Okay.
We got a question.
First time we're going to start off with a question.
Get a microphone. Get a microphone.
I can speak loud.
We're just going to let the sound people.
Still got some energy. Okay.
Right. We're going to start off with a question.
My question is for the young generation of our modern society, postmodernism. And like, if I call our society the microwave generation, then would you agree that if you take us as a human species, the way we survived, the way we moved on and did things, that this generation, we want everything for nothing? I'm calling it microwave generation. Put as simple as food. We used to go out, kill it, bring it, clean it, make the fire, and then when we made the fire, then we will cook our food, and then we ate it and we shared it, and we took care of our society. Some society did, some society didn't. But now, even though that we have microwave and we put a meat inside and 30 seconds, we said, bloody hell, that's too long. So my point is that aren't we lost? The question is that is the society has lost patience?
Thank you.
You want to go first? Should I go first? Okay, I'll go first. All right. Let's answer this question. The scepter. With this scepter, I will answer the question. All right. I do agree with you. I agree with what you're saying. People are having less patience nowadays. It's true, but I think it's more of a reaction to the world we live in today. Because the world we live in today is much faster. It's a world where you can go from one side of the planet to the other in 1 day or 2 days or whatever kind of plane you'll be flying. It's the world. The communication between people has become faster. The functioning of society has become faster. The achievement of goals and of basic needs has become infinitely faster than before. and that's not a bad thing. What I think, what I do agree with you about is, first of all, that this is what's happening, and what I really agree is how should we actually face this? By making it so people don't lose their patience completely, so people don't start needing dopamine hits from social media or whatever. In those terms, I agree with you. We should be able to moderate ourselves to a certain extent, to not be overwhelmed by the quickness of movement of the world, to still have some things that we, that we actually grab and we keep them, not just throw them away for something else. You know what I mean? Like, for example, maybe parts of your ideology, maybe your parents, maybe your friends. You shouldn't just throw them away at the first opportunity.
Is it a good thing that we've lost patience?
What? Losing patience?
It had made. I have the question.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
You can't sorry. Once you've asked your question, there's two people to speak.
Okay,
so
okay. I'll cut to the chase.
Yeah, then he's next. He's next. Yeah. So put it back. Yeah, put that in the middle, and then he's next.
Well, you can't hear me as well.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing in terms of achievements. It's a good thing that people have become more impatient because they will achievements. Yes.
What do you mean achievement?
I mean achieving your goals. You have an ambition to become a businessman. You have an ambition to become a doctor. You have an ambition to become, a teacher, a public speaker, whatever.
But isn't it achievement that we achieve then it doesn't make any sense?
No, but look, we should strive to get those achievements faster. That's what I mean. That's a good thing. It's a good thing to have that kind of impatience. But it's not a good thing to be impatient about absolutely everything. Your impatience should be a way of moving you forward and of making you strive for the things you desire, faster. To not just live in inaction. That's what I mean by that. Hopefully we can understand.
I understand Pablo's point of view of how it is important that things are progressively, faster if you want to do these certain professions, whether it's a doctor or whatnot. But we do severely lack this delayed gratification because, all these social media, this materialistic culture we live in, it is giving us impatience, and I think that's exactly what the elites want, because they don't like people who save and have long-term goals, so to say. They like people who just keep pumping money into the system, whether it's like buying the latest trainers from this.
They don't want competition.
Well, yeah. There's a lot of competition, but the fact is that people are not. They're not putting effort into long-term goals. Like we used to be building churches that would take hundreds of years to be built. We expect the next skyscraper to be built within 2 or 3 years. And we see how badly, personally, I find that our ancestors had much better taste in agriculture than we currently do today. Like we're building architecture, we're building like glass dildos, and we need a balance. We need a balance of people who are willing to put in the time and effort for these long-term goals, because that is what is necessary for a functioning society and nation to survive. We need to be planning for having families rather than having careers, and it's going to completely fall on itself if we continue this obsession of having things now, because we're going to be fucked.
Right, in answer to your point, Mo, your question isn't actually very global though, because you're talking about the aspirations and the lifestyles of the Western world, or not necessarily the Western world, maybe what I call the developed world. I'm sure that if we left here today from our wonderful London and went to live maybe in a small African village somewhere, we wouldn't see that pace issue. The issue, I think, is it's not a global aspiration. It seems to be an aspiration of the developing world. And anybody wanting to then enter that aspirational world creates their city on that fast, high-powered system. So if you look at places like, which I went to recently, I've been to Baku, for example, in Azerbaijan, which is a city that's changed from all recognition now into this modern hyper city. If you look at Dubai, the creations of these sort of cities that came out of what I would class as, and to be fair, sort of primitive Arab areas of the world, they're now these incredible skyscraper cities, all based on fast food, fast this, fast that. I think what we've done in the developed world, not the global world, is we've set the aspirational standards to be that high-speed world.
I was going to say, I think what Mo's talking about is not necessarily a loss of patience. This is my take on the question. It's to do with a loss of genuine will towards something. Like we talked about long-term versus short-term, having a will towards something means overriding your impulses in the moment for something greater than that, for something greater potentially than yourself. And I think we have lost that in our society, as has already been said. We live in a world where we are adapted, as Mo said, to a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, and what our elites, if you want to call them that, have done is they have hijacked that mental drive to create entire supermarkets where we quote unquote hunt and gather for plastic packaged products. So they've taken what they know about psychology and they've manipulated it against us, and this has created what you call the microwave generation. And that's what we're up against essentially. If we want to return to a sort of state of normalcy, if we're going to call it that, we need to challenge the elites, to therefore challenge the immersive environments of the consumer world that we live in. That's my 2 cents on it.
So, Mo?
The Red Bull is for the question. Is there a question?
No, I'll take the white ball once you're finished.
Yeah, I'll give you the ball after.
Thank you.
So Mo, there are a couple of things. You have to recognize that, number one, today, the amount of information that the average person is exposed to in a day is roughly equivalent to the amount of information a person in the UK would have been exposed to 100 years ago. That's how much the world has changed. The rate of movement and the rate of change has become so exponential and unrecognizable that if you were to try to live in a mindset from 100 or 200 years ago, it would simply be impossible. And even then I would argue in a very paradoxical way, this environment could potentially be better to test and practice patience rather than an environment where you were compelled to practice patience because your environment simply couldn't support doing things faster. Yes, I can get what I want in 5 minutes, but what's wrong with me trying to wait another day for it? And the typical test that people have done, and this is not an old test, this is the 1970s, is that people who are more successful tend to demonstrate a better quality for self-gratification than others.
Yeah.
So those elites that you keep talking about, the values that we profess, get things quickly, get things now, get things fast, those are the values of the elites that you're talking about. They're not in any way more patient or more successful. They want to build those skyscrapers and they want them operational as quickly as possible so they can start making money off of them tomorrow rather than make money off of it next year. And second of all, and here's another dimension that you guys might not be considering. You see, you're talking about the difference between patience and wanting my stuff quickly and now. Well, you have to recognize that is, again, and I have to agree with you on that, largely an elitist maneuver. And it started, and I'm repeating it for the third time, in this circle in the 1930s, when the commercial model stopped becoming I buy based on my needs to I buy based on my desires. People are being marketed to, and as the gentleman rightly put it, in a psychological way, so that people are buying based on, oh, I need this to become a better man or a more attractive woman, or this food tastes better, when in all it's all the same.
Butt injections.
What have you. And if you think about it this way, it does bring up the question of personal responsibility that you brought about. But at the same time, how much responsibility can you put on the person when you have corporations spending millions trying to figure out a way to get past that? That's all they do. They're putting glutamine and chemicals in the food to make it smell better and get you hungrier. They're putting stuff in chips and cheese so that every time you get a sniff of it, you automatically think, that tastes good. I want more of that. So to your point, it's not a binary situation. It isn't that one is better or another. And the challenge that I would ask you in that is, would you go back 200 years, having been alive today? Thank you.
I would agree with you that humanity progresses, humanity develops, and I agree that humanity brings things that benefits us. I do not have any objection to that if we had let's say an operation, as you mentioned, that we can do it right now. I do not, but as a human, I think we need to take a step back. As a person myself, I think we need to take a step back that some development, some progress is better for humanity, and so many of them have been created for us are bad for us. When it's bad for us, I think we shouldn't do those things. I mean, things are better that when we go, we have our operation, but when we say we are democratic and we brought a government which is democratically free and lets us what we want, but they shouldn't allow those things which harm our society. Like they throw 24 months of internet. You cannot escape it. I never voted for those sort of things that should be bad for the society. My point is that we go along with the things the society, which we call it, let's say, media or rich people, throw at us. We take it. We don't reject. Because we think, if I reject it, I will be called weird. I will be called different. And to be different and to not agree with somebody, I think is good. And then we should reject the things that we think is progressive, the thing is modern. But if we take a step back, it's harmful for us. That's my point. That's how we go along with the society. We do not ask, we do not question. Yeah, let's go with it. That's my point.
Can I ask a question?
The question's over there.
Can I just
the question wasn't it?
Yeah, speaker. One second. The question you have, is it a different subject?
Yeah, it's kind of related, but it's a different kind of...
All right, hold that then. Hold that for a while. And we'll
You can change the subject.
Don't ask the question yet. We'll wait until everybody's had enough.
Yes.
Their speech.
Go on, Colin.
Just what Mo was saying.
Hold it.
I think the gentleman there said, would we go back 200 years? Well, and what Mo was saying is we kind of did. Our family went to join the Irish Mennonites in Ireland. And when we joined them, we got rid of the television, got rid of the newspaper, got rid of the radio.
Antibiotics.
Where relationship and the joy of doing were more important than the utility that you got out of it. And this is radically different, because I think we all agree that in today's society we look at the end result as opposed to the method to bring that about as being possibly even more important. So I would agree with Mo that maybe this is the best illustration. There were some tourists who went to an Amish community, and they said, "What's Amish? What's it all about?" And the Amish man thought about it, and he said this to them. He said, "Hands up here who's got a television." And everybody put their hands up. He said, "Hands up all those who think perhaps the television may not be the best thing in the world." Most of them put their hands up. Hands up who thinks it gets in the way of the relationships between them, because the mum's watching daytime television, dad watching sports, and the children, hands up who thinks it's not actually a good thing for family relationship. Everybody put their hands up. And then he said, who's going to get rid of the television? And nobody put their hands up. And this is exactly what Mo says. They say we think carefully about what we let into our lives. We analyse whether it is a good thing overall. We analyse whether it's a good thing for relationships, whether long term it will have any negative effects. And only after we've given it some discernment do we make the decision. And we always reflect on it, and maybe we can accommodate some of those things. But I would be an advocate for people power, in effect, say you can opt out of this rat race. You can do it on your own, or you can do it collectively with other people who are similar. Yeah. So let's say me and Mo and maybe some atheists or whatever, we all had broadly speaking, we wanted to opt out. Well, you can do it yourself. You can start your own business. You can homeschool your own children. You can live in the middle of nowhere. You can actually start to live in a society. When I say utopian society, obviously we'll never reach this utopian, this transcendent utopian vision. But if we aspire to it, we can live so much more closer to it by doing without things, as opposed to thinking we're going to find happiness in things. Because what happens is, I'll just finish this off. Broadly speaking, prosperity comes at the cost of relationship, and that's the same in the domestic home as it is to the wider society. So I'd recommend we start with relationship and see the other things as secondary. That's
good point.
Very interesting subject, by the way. I think it's. Thank you for contributing this. This idea that we're just going too fast and this next generation are losing something and this is a loss to culture and society is a notion which has gone back thousands of years. You can read texts from over 2,000 years ago of the adults going, oh, the young, they're just too bleeding wild, they've got too many crazy ideas. Yeah, to be a human being means we are going to die. So there is a little bit of pressure onto achieving tasks to achieve a certain race to it all, because otherwise we won't have what we have today in society, which is like antibiotics. And then we end up dying of the most ridiculous diseases in the world. I think the danger with this conversation, which has been the danger for thousands of years, by the way, is that it is trying to pick on one group of people who tend to be quite young and not so rich or capable of expressing themselves accordingly, and kind of picking on them for the problems of society, picking on them to say you're on social media too much, you picked up a book, or you're crazy, or in the olden days, you're going around in a cart with wheels. That's a bit bleeding crazy. We used to push everything around. What's wrong with pushing? I mean, it's literally, it descends to that sort of mentality of blaming the modern world for the problems. In actual fact, I think someone around here, brought up that it's actually the system which is in charge, and it's the system which dictates what will be right and correct. And it's bizarre that we end up pointing to the young as such, when in actual fact we should be pointing to the churches. This gentleman picked up on the idea, oh, we took 1,000 years to build that church.
Hundreds.
Trust me, if they could have built it straight away, they would have done. If they had the technology to build it straight away, they would have done. And let's not forget this church thing that he brought up is actually an expression of quite a lot of genocide and repressions across this world, like the Catholic Church. It raped and destroyed South America. And all that gold it stole from there, it built these churches which took hundreds of years. They didn't care of all the people they murdered. 95% of the population of South America, they still got their church, and it was grand. So no, it's a good point, and I think it's a great thing to bring up, but there are to blame the weakest people in society for the issues in society is not how we will deal with the real problems in society. Thank you very much. And thank you for the question. I don't know who's next.
I will come back to your point.
Yeah, so like...
Church doesn't
No, you can, because I know you've got
I have to go in like 5 minutes.
This guy's been waiting for a long time.
Okay, yeah, so like...
No, wait. He's got the ball. He's going to speak next.
I have to go in 5
Ty
minutes.
can go
You have
first.
to go.
Ty can go first.
It's not rushing for you. Go
ahead.
ahead.
You want me next, or?
Yes, you're next.
So, a lot of what Dusty's just said has provoked me, but for the sake of the discussion at large, I'm going to ignore some of what he said. What I will address that we've brought up so far, because like I say, I don't want this to become, I'd rather have that discussion alone with you, if that's all right.
No, we'll do it here. It's brilliant. Be passionate.
I don't want to have a one-on-one discussion in a whole
Don't
group.
be violent.
So,
Can I just get 1 minute?
what I will address
I
is...
couldn't agree more. Don't be violent.
So it's a man that stood up and came
Don't
over.
be evil. So, what I will address What I will address is this idea of desire versus need, which was proposed as a sort of dichotomy. I don't think they are necessarily completely opposed to one another. Obviously, we desire certain things that we need, but there is a certain level to which people are very uneducated about desire. If I were to propose a model, I would say there are sort of 3 levels of desire. We have craving, we have, what's the next one? Passion, and we have volition. Cravings are things that we all have and that we all share in common. We all crave food, we all crave sex, we all crave the basic things in life. Passion is something that we develop on ourselves. We all have passions, but we all direct passion in different ways. And volition is sort of something like building a legacy for yourself through your own actions in this life. The last for the next generation. And I think that basically the main problem we're facing is the elites do not educate us about this. They do not educate us in our own will, because they know that if they did, we would will for something more than just basic cravings, and we would will towards something we're passionate about, and we would have in mind future generations. So I think this is really what we're up against. And I don't think, what I will say on Dust's point is I don't think anyone here is actually blaming the up-and-coming generation, the next generation who grows up on social media. And I do agree, though, that that's the wrong mindset to have, because they hold the future, the next generation.
What's your question?
Yeah. He didn't have a question.
Wait. This guy's been waiting. This guy's been waiting.
Pavlov is going to have his question.
Yeah, but he doesn't have a microphone.
It's okay.
It's okay. It's not a problem. I don't need the microphone.
You need microphone. Right,
You get a small one. Yeah, my question is, it kind of manifests from what's been discussed. What is the impact of this rapid-fire society in terms of this kind of manifestation of attention deficit? People wanting to, for the internet to grab their attention, or society to grab their attention, and they get bored quite quickly, and that cuts across all age groups. What is the actual impact that has on mental health? And that's my question.
Right.
What are the effects?
The effects. Well, obviously, people having less of ability to, focus, pay attention to things, and yeah, like I mentioned before, the elites are wanting to make as much of us as possible into bees, essentially. Bees that will always pump into the system by buying all this materialistic goods, whether it's the latest trainers or clothes or seeing the latest film from Hollywood. Anything that stops us from saving in terms of saving money and having these long-term goals, whether it's like preparing for a family or these other things. The elites don't want that. They would rather that we stay in our parents' basement and constantly, put into, throw away our money for the most ridiculous things, as I mentioned before. The whole thing you mentioned about the church, that was just an example of how our ancestors had a lot more of a healthier mindset of making art and things that actually took time and preparation. And we see in the postmodernist society, I mean, I could go in an art museum, put these glasses on the floor, and somehow people think that's art.
Yeah, it happened.
Exactly.
It happened.
And again, this is all like a cultural Marxist, an attempt to make us hate anything that was of the classic, let's say, colonial mindset, where we had a strong sense of culture and ethnic pride, how tribal societies have always existed at the very dawn of time. Instead, the Marxist mindset want us to completely eradicate all those old traditions, not have any pride of our ethnic group, not have any religion, not have any pride in our culture. Borders must be destroyed. Anyone can come in because we're all individual humans. It doesn't matter what our skin color is, yada yada yada. As long and it's just going to result in a huge backlash. And I think we're seeing the signs of it.
Absolutely not true. And I tell you the reason why.
Who would have expected
the children now have a problem with this social media, and it drives the parents crazy, obviously, because they somehow enter into this artificial world of puppets, shoot and kill, and all this kind of nonsense violence. And when they go in the real world, they use verbal violence because they learn it in the social media. They use a very antisocial behavior. They have a very antisocial behavior, and they reach a point when the obsession with the social media is so much, they cannot distinguish, they cannot make a demarcation line between virtual reality and reality. This is a real curse. I know because I have children. I know. And the children, I mean, I would say 10 out of 10 are caught in a spider web of total delusion and the alienation from the real world and from reality. That creates a lot of tension between parents and children. But unfortunately, the parents have to work, have to make a living. So they are quite happy that the child is engaged into this nonsense because they cannot entertain the child. They don't have the physical time to entertain the child. Most of the household is not like in the past. The husband was the breadwinner, the wife prepared the food. Now, most of the household, both husband and wife, have to work, have to contribute to the management of the family because the prices keep on going up, the services keep on becoming worse and worse, and therefore we are stuck in a very dangerous situation. Added to this danger is the other danger. I know the other danger, major danger of humanity. My husband works in Verizon, okay? He works is a scientist that works in fiber optic. So what he's doing now, and since the last 10 years, he keeps on going to courses to update, to robot, everything will be robot. So the future is robots that are overtaking human beings. So you can say, well, but people still work in the assembly line, in manufacturing, whatever. Yeah, but the fact that we live a reality that has never existed before in human history, which is robotization, and the majority of the people redundant, is a major concern and should concern all of us. Thank you very much.
Getting back directly to your question, the issue is, that wasn't having a go at answer. I'm just saying, going right to the direct point, there's so many things we could mention, and that's why some of these responses are lengthy. I can understand it. Very quickly, it's an oxymoron for me. The social media, I'm of the age group that remembers none of this wonderful world, and I'm now in this wonderful social media world. I used to leave my work on a Friday evening in front of my little phone that you used to dial on my desk, say goodbye, and every weight on my shoulders left my shoulders as I walked out of the office till Monday. Not now. I'm totally contactable. There's reasons why I haven't answered someone's email today. The panic issues to do with mental health come from the point that I am now accountable for where I am in my pocket here. I can have my wife texting me, my father texting me, somebody demanding a reply to something that years ago you were out of contact. That's the downside. The plus side is we have better ways now of communicating with family abroad and all sorts of things. Generations of my family I thought were lost to me. There were always a once-a-year phone call and a letter are now immediately with me. It has recreated our entire family balance. I would answer your question on this. The mental health issue is the pressures this is making for us, but it also, on the other side, as an oxymoron, has benefits that we sort of have to go with. But mental health's an issue because we're all answerable for the devices in our pockets. That's it.
good speech, by the way.
Did you have a question?
No, I put it back. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to address the mental health issue on a generational level. So I want to talk about the baby boom generation and Generation X and the millennials. I think that the baby boom generation characterized as buying into the American dream post Second World War, and the idea that we can just have continuous consumption on this economic model. Generation X, I think broadly, which is sort of 35 to 50-year-olds, don't really believe in that dream. And I think it's their responsibility to prick that bubble, because in many ways the millennials are within that bubble that the baby boomers have created. And the scientific consensus is that the ecology can't stand this dream based on monoculture, which is based on the plough, which is based on one person's desire to acquire a huge amount of goods, is not sustainable. The plough opens up the land, opens up Mother Earth, if you like, to the dehydration from the sun, from the wind, destroys the bacterial life, the fungal life, requires huge inputs of pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, fertilizers, and is destroying the earth. This is the consensus. And so that bubble has to be pricked. And the baby boomers that control the finances, that control the media largely, have to help deflate that bubble. And we have to return to other ways of culture, permaculture, which brings in mixed systems of growing which imitate nature. And we haven't got all that much time. And also with regard to the animals, this is another bubble, or it's another. Most of the animals in this country are confined, artificially inseminated, are mutilated, are separated from their families, and this is something that speaks to the heart about what is wrong with our society. So that's my response to your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll go after you. But I'll go after you.
Thank you for your statement. I think that's very added greatly to the conversation and very good points raised. The mental health thing is, absolutely vital to bring in that up. But I'd like to add this to your idea of the mental health. It's only just recently in our modern society that we've acknowledged that mental health is even a problem to begin with. Because we've had thousands of years where your concerns of the world and your stress have just been ignored, totally ignored. It's only just recently it's been looked at as an issue, and then money put into it, so that then if you do have a mental health issue, then you can go to somebody who will offer you help. And help is not pills. That may be part of it, but help is talking to another human being. But that needs money, wealth, and a community to be able to come round and help with that on a community level. And I think this is a tragedy of the past to let look at the army, the horrors of war. The army, the suicide rate there is incredible, just how high it is. They need help, and you need wealth to do it. Our government, we've got a religious government, the Tories, have made sure that mental health is taken off the table to be funded. The horrors and suicides, that has now contributed because they don't deem it proper. The religious elite do not think that your health concerns are an issue, and their reaction to that is to make sure they cut money to this area of expertise and great need. and they just say, just get on with it. Get on with your current life. Don't question anything. Just persevere. How can an individual have any individual responsibility about their actions when they're not given an opportunity to grow as a human being? We must, not end mental health, but to dramatically reduce mental health funding, not only for mental health services, but to a society where human beings can grow and accept different ideas. Must happen in society. Must. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Yes.
No, you were first.
Yes. I mean, when I was talking about mental health, I was talking about the increase of depression and basically anxiety, because there has been a marked increase. Now, parts of that can be explained through better detection, through basically being able to recognize when people were depressed. But the fact is that there are a lot more people now suffering from psychopathology than there used to be. And part of that is basically people trying to grasp or try to understand the impossibility of everything. And my issue is, how do we actually create a cathartic system which can address that issue? Because most traditional psychiatric interventions, be it through psychotropic medication or through CBT, which is the mainstream therapy, is not working, because people are actually relapsing back into mental health. So there was a lot of kind of interesting issues which are raised. So like in terms of the community, which I think is very, very important, what kind of therapeutic value would that be in addressing the increase of psychical conflict? I'm sorry, I know I actually used a...
all right.
Yes.
You know, this time around I actually agree about something that Dust said. You're right.
Sit slowly. Sit down slowly.
I'm suffering mental health.
Careful with the
Yes, I am.
They can be a bit dodgy. The chairs can be a bit dodgy
Don't
sometimes.
rock on the chairs.
Yeah, don't dance on the chairs.
Just about.
Yeah, I do agree about some things. For example, that if they could build the church in 2-3 years, they would. It's just about the means that they had at their disposal at those times. It's not about that they had no patience. It's about that they had no choice but have more patience, because they simply couldn't build the church more, faster. Now, I do disagree about what he said about South America, because even though, the Spanish were very ruthless, they were very disrespectful to the South Americans. When the Montezuma, the emperor on that time, he accepted Cortés with respect, and Cortés abused that respect. It's true. But most of the people who died, they were not killed by the Spaniards or by any of the colonialists. They were killed by diseases that unfortunately were brought to those lands by the Europeans, and nobody really knew that they would kill all those people. The vast majority of the people who died were out of diseases that were brought from Europe, because they didn't have an immune system to those diseases. It's as simple as that. Now let's refer a little bit about what the gentleman over there said about the plow. I don't know what's the big argument about the plow. I've been hearing this argument before, that it's not helpful for agriculture. It absolutely is. People have been practicing the plow. They've been plowing the earth because it's helpful to produce more. People want to produce more so they can earn more with production, and they can use the extra production to maybe sell it, or maybe give it to someone else, or just to live in prosperity. So, I mean, I don't know what's so bad about the plow. I guess it kills some of the worms. I guess it kills some of the life underneath the earth. But it's necessary. It's necessary to increase production at least a little bit more. I think if the societies nowadays, if the people nowadays didn't use any of the plow, didn't use any of those advanced technologies to work the earth, we would simply starve to death. It's as simple as that. The earth there isn't enough arable earth. By that I mean there isn't enough earth that's fit to be farmed for us to survive if we don't use those advanced technologies. Now, I think that's basically it. I only wanted to refer a little bit to these things.
This is, excuse me, no, it's you? Sorry. What I noticed in this kind of judging the mistakes. You know, we basically here trying to judge which mistakes humanity is making to, you know, some mistakes can be repairable, some cannot. For example, if you overfish or if you overuse, overplow, then the resources are limited. I don't think we can be so arrogant of saying, oh, well, the new technology will resolve that. It's not as simple as that, because new technology, behind new technology, there are private interests. There are precise private interests. Therefore, if, for example, it's not profitable for a company or a multinational to create a productive soil because it's too costly or because topsoil is running out all over the world, they will not invest. We live under a system based on investment for profit, not for use. So there's no point saying, oh well, we just will invent or science will always overcome the odds. It's not like that. It's not based on the human brains and human skill of producing what is useful for everybody. It is unfortunately stuck to the principle of profit, money, and big lobbies. Thank you very much.
Are you addressing the same point?
Yeah,
we've got a question coming up.
Yeah, we've got a question.
Thank you. I'm going to change the subject, so if you want to finish on this point, I respect that.
Thank you very much. Oh yeah, microphone.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, not another ball.
No.
Man can have too many balls.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to say, the gentleman next to me said produce more, and producing more is leading to a better society and is justified on that assumption. But in actual fact, our farmers, which are owned by the capitalists, are not there to produce more for a better society. They're actually there to put more pesticides. Farmers are told how to farm, and farmers are ordered, if you don't farm in this particular way, we will punish you horrendously. The capitalists sell the seed. If you don't use their seed, then you're not allowed to be part of the farming system. You'll be seen as a threat and eradicated accordingly. And then once you take that seed, then you have to take their pesticides. Pesticides are one of the greatest crimes on humanity. The pesticides, by the way, came from the chemicals of war, from World War I. That's where their origins come from. And then those same people that murdered people with weapons of chemicals, those same, literally, not quite literally, but almost literally, then became the pesticides of the 21st century, which we have to consume. And you have no choice in that. You have to consume the poison. So farming isn't just about producing more. And the question is, why do we need to produce more in the first place? Where did this idea come from that we can't, as a community, regulate amongst ourselves how much population we're going to add? For example, in Africa, it's deemed a sin to use a condom. And yet, a condom would then dramatically increase the wealth in a community, because that community can then look after not overpopulate, because an overpopulated community leads to literally death and poverty. And then saying, oh, we've got to feed that population that we've forced on you by taking your right away to contraception, if you wish that, not forced, is, so it's an ideal dream that somehow farmers and all this isn't actually a much more disturbing issue, which the capitalists have deemed that we must live in. We never voted on that. They did that, and we're forced to live in their dictatorship. Thank you.
Yeah, it's on the same question. You know, again, I agree on some things you said. For example, in China, they had a kind of a campaign to stop overpopulation, which eventually started to go very bad because they would basically kill female babies.
Which is why condoms.
Yeah, eventually it got banned. But in the beginning, it had a good intent to prevent overpopulation, and I agree about that. I agree that countries with a lot of problems because of poverty, because of overpopulation, should do what you're saying. Basically, I agree on that part. But
Thank you.
But you know, again, about the production, I never said that just because you produce more, it's good. Of course, you have to have the environment in mind. Again, if we look at China, with Mao Zedong, as in the example I very often make, with the 5 plagues policy, if you start messing with the environment without actually understanding how it works, you'll actually mess yourself up even more. Like Mao Zedong he encouraged people to shoot all the sparrows, and when they shot all the sparrows, then the locusts reproduced at such a rate that they ate all the grain, and the Chinese basically starved to death. I mean, lots of Chinese starved to death because of that, because of misunderstanding of environment. So I agree about that too, but my point is that my main point is not for people to just completely nuke the earth and take from it as much as possible. We need to be careful with it, of course. We need to know what kind of pesticides, what kind of things we need to put in the earth to help it produce more, but at the same time so we don't make it toxic in the end. And I completely disagree about what you said with the pesticides being created in World War I. The pesticides existed way before that. They started being used during the agricultural revolution to some extent, and then they were even more used in the industrial revolution with the implementation of machinery in agriculture and in industry and all that stuff. So World War I was basically when pesticides have been used for decades and decades, bro. So that's what I have to say. Produce more if you can produce more, but don't mess up the environment completely. Like, be careful with the environment. That's what I have to say.
No, it's going to be on the same.
Go ahead.
Over here.
You're
got a speaker here.
You're next.
You want me to carry on with this subject?
Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, you want to speak?
Because I'm going to change
Sorry,
the
bro.
subject.
Didn't see you.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
But I just wanted to respond to any question.
So you're still in the same
No,
subject.
I'm not. I'm just waiting for a question so I can respond.
New question.
Yes.
Okay, new question.
We've got one more thing to say about the ploughing to address.
You want to respond to that as well?
Yeah, I tell you what, I'm going to cede to the gentleman here to do that. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, last two on that previous question.
I'm being fair here because we're going to change the topic, and I think it's right. So, okay, if you want something more to say, then just say it. That's fair. Please note that I gave to this man here.
Yes, thank you very much.
I'm giving it out.
It's too ideal. It's just idealism, isn't it? Because the truth
Microphone.
is this actually real?
Yes, it is.
Hello?
Yeah.
It's just idealism. The truth is, the reason pesticides are used, toxic ones, is because we continue to consume them. McDonald's is a hugely profitable company who is well in cahoots with companies like Monsanto. You can cry about toxic pesticides all you want, as long as you continue to consume the things with it in it, then you're part of the problem. You can't simply eliminate the demand factor in all of this. You eat these things. You can't complain about them being toxic if you eat them. There's a huge, you live in London, you have a consumer choice better than most of the globe. You can eat whatever you want, yet you still eat toxic foods. The companies aren't going to listen to you if you eat them and then complain about their toxicity. Wake the hell up, man. Stop eating this shit. You know what I'm saying? Exactly, man. You're part of the problem. As a consumer, you have a lot of power. You can either choose to consume what you hate or not. I admit organic foods are somewhat more expensive, but they don't contain things that are considered poisonous by organic standards. And besides, from there you can maybe even switch your diet to eat things which aren't a part of the large farming industry, things like potatoes, meat, wheat, rice, sugar. These things are in such high consumption that the companies will do anything to increase crop sizes, and that means using poisonous pesticides to ensure the crops remain, etc. If you move your diet to smaller types of crops which aren't subject to large toxic intervention, then maybe you're going to do better for yourself and influence the industry to change. I don't want to hear two ways about it. You're still eating the shit that you criticize. I'm not feeling it.
I agree with you.
That's a very good point.
Pavlov, I just want to make a point. I want to make a point to you. Is that Pavlov? I've listened to you on the soapboxes and in debate in general, and I think that you're a very intelligent person, well researched. And I would just simply ask you to research into permaculture and look. When you're looking at how efficient a system is, you have to look at input and output, and that. I think that there's a lot of confusion in the modern world of equating speed with efficiency, and that if you're talking about ploughing, it's very fast. Monoculture is very fast, but it's not efficient. So all I want to say is just look into permaculture, where you have systems that are creating a diverse variety of crops and foods in the same space, as opposed to monoculture that creates one crop in one space. Just to do a little research, that's all I ask.
I'll just end by quickly answering. Let me just say something and that's it. I didn't realize we were talking about monoculture. I thought we were talking about pesticides. And my point was that not all pesticides ruin the earth or ruin the environment. And we should be able to
We were talking about ploughing. It's a subject of ploughing.
Yeah, but ploughing is good. It's the most
This is what I'm asking you to research, because permaculture doesn't use the plough.
I don't think there's anything wrong with ploughing.
It's just that. It's just permaculture doesn't use the plough. So look into permaculture. That's all I'm asking.
Fair enough.
Have a break now because it's raining.
Yeah, sure.
We'll come back with a new stuff.
Of course.
Come take over everything from your belly. Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. Listen.
My name is Jessie Shen. My Chinese name is Ray Shen. It's my first time trying to protect myself, my rights, and my family rights in order to save my daughter. My daughter Valentina Shen